You were told the lie early, that money is the finish line, that once you make it, the world will finally leave you alone. It won't. The moment you accumulate anything worth defending, the hunt begins. Quietly, politely, with smiles, with paperwork, with laws written by men who already understand what you don't yet see. Here is the uncomfortable truth most people never hear until it's too late. Wealth is not owned by the rich. It is leased to the powerless, and the lease can be terminated at any moment. This is not a motivational slogan. It is a historical pattern. Empires did not fall because they lacked gold. They fell because the men holding the gold mistook possession for control. They confused numbers on parchment for authority in the real world. Think about this for a moment. If money alone were enough, lottery winners would become dynasties. Inheritance would guarantee dominance. Hard work would permanently protect prosperity, but it doesn't, because money attracts gravity. Every dollar you gain bends the world around you. Attention curves towards you. Expectations distort. Entitlement grows. And unseen forces begin aligning, not to help you, but to test whether you can hold what you claim. This is where most people fail. They celebrate the income, they announce the win, they relax. And in that relaxation, predators wake up. Not cartoon villains, not obvious enemies, but systems, structures, incentives designed by colder minds. Taxes don't punish poverty, they punish visibility. Lawsuits don't target wrongdoing, they target resources. Regulations don't protect fairness, they consolidate leverage. And then there are the personal invasions. A brother with a business idea, a friend with an emergency, a distant cousin who suddenly remembers your name. Each request is small, reasonable, justified until it isn't. This is how wealth is bled out of men who never learned power. Because power is not aggression. Power is not shouting. Power is not arrogance. Power is the silent ability to say no and have that no respected without explanation. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He watched republics rot not from greed, but from softness, from leaders who believed virtue alone would protect them, from wealthy men who believed being liked was a shield. It isn't. Likability is a tax, and the more you have, the more you pay. Here is the first lesson most motivational speakers are too afraid to teach you. If you cannot impose consequences, you do not own anything. Your wealth is provisional. Your comfort is borrowed. Your position exists only until someone stronger decides otherwise. And that decision may already be forming. You may not see it yet, but it's watching you. In the next part, we're going to expose the most dangerous phase of success, the moment right after you make it, when your guard drops and the real war begins. Because acquiring wealth is easy compared to surviving it, and most men never do. The most dangerous moment in a man's financial life is not when he is broke, it's when he feels safe. Safety is the signal predators wait for. Comfort is the scent of blood in the water. History repeats this lesson with cruel consistency. The men who survive scarcity develop instincts. The men who survive abundance often lose them. They trade alertness for ease, vigilance for routine, strategy for habits, and that is when power quietly slips away. Here is what no one tells you when you start earning real money. Wealth rewires your psychology before it rewires your circumstances. Your posture changes, your tone softens, your sense of urgency dissolves. You begin to assume tomorrow will look like today. That assumption is fatal because systems do not sleep. While you're planning vacations, institutions are updating rules. While you're optimizing comfort, competitors are studying leverage. While you're enjoying stability, someone else is mapping how to extract value from you. This is not paranoia, it is pattern recognition. Look at every fallen aristocracy, every collapsed dynasty, every self-made man who vanished quietly instead of failing loudly. The story is the same. They didn't lose everything overnight. They were slowly surrounded, one concession at a time, one compromise at a time, one "it's not worth the trouble" at a time. Power is not seized, it is surrendered, and it is almost always surrendered politely. Machiavelli warned against this exact weakness. He observed that men confuse peace with permanence. They believe that because no one is attacking them today, no one is preparing to attack them tomorrow. That belief creates a blind spot. A man without power believes rules are neutral. A man with power understands rules are weapons. Taxes are adjustable. Laws are interpretable. Contracts are malleable. Enforcement is selective. None of these systems exist to preserve your wealth. They exist to manage it, often away from you. And then there is reputation. The higher you rise, the more your image becomes public property. People feel entitled to your resources because they feel familiar with your success. They watched you climb. They cheered. Now they believe they own a piece of you. Refuse them, and you're selfish. Comply, and you're drained. This is the trap of the wealthy but powerless man. He tries to buy peace with generosity. He believes appeasement will make him untouchable. It never does. Appeasement signals weakness. Weakness invites escalation. Every time you give without structure, expectations rise. Every time you bend without consequence, demands grow. Every time you explain yourself, authority erodes. Power is not cruelty, but it is clarity. Power says, this boundary exists, and crossing it costs you. Without that cost, boundaries are imaginary. This is why so many wealthy men live in constant anxiety. Not because they fear losing money, but because they feel it slipping through invisible cracks. They don't know how to seal. They sense it. The pressure, the quiet extraction, the endless pull. But they don't know the cause. They think the problem is stress, or bad luck, or too many responsibilities. It isn't. The problem is they built income before they built dominance. And dominance cannot be improvised under attack. In the next part, we will dismantle the biggest myth keeping successful men vulnerable, the belief that morality alone protects wealth. Because the world does not reward goodness. It rewards enforceability. And the moment you understand that, everything changes. Goodness is the most expensive luxury a powerless man can afford. And most men pay for it with everything they have. Here is the uncomfortable fracture point where fantasy collapses into reality. The world does not run on moral outcomes. It runs on enforceable ones. Justice is not automatic. Fairness is not guaranteed. Respect is not gifted to those who deserve it. It is granted to those who can impose it. This is the lesson Machiavelli learned by watching republics tear themselves apart while preaching virtue. The men who spoke the loudest about morality were often the first to be dismantled by those who understood leverage. Because morality without power is merely decoration. You've seen this play out, even if you never named it. The honest businessman crushed by legal pressure, he didn't anticipate. The generous family provider drained by endless obligations he can't refuse. The ethical leader removed quietly by a board that smiles while signing the papers. Each one believed character would protect him. It didn't. Power protects character, not the other way around. The moral man without power becomes predictable, and predictability is exploitable. Once your behavior is known, once people understand that you will always do the right thing, always compromise, always avoid conflict, you become manageable. Manageable men are farmed. This is why so many systems prefer virtue signaling over virtue itself. It keeps people compliant. It convinces them that restraint is strength and that refusal is cruelty. But Machiavelli never argued for evil. He argued for capacity. He understood something most people still refuse to accept. A man who cannot be feared when necessary will always be sacrificed when convenient. Fear does not mean violence. Fear means consequence. It means that when you say no, the other party recalculates. It means that crossing you carries a cost that outweighs the reward. It means that your boundaries are not requests. They are facts. The powerless man confuses kindness with safety. He believes being good will make him immune, but goodness is invisible without force behind it. It becomes a weakness masquerading as virtue. This is where wealth accelerates the problem. When you have nothing, your morality is irrelevant. When you have something, your morality becomes a liability unless it is armored. Money magnifies everything, including exposure. The more you possess, the more your decisions affect others. The more they believe they deserve access to you. And the moment you deny them, they will search for mechanisms to take what you won't give. Not because they are evil, because incentives exist, and incentives don't care about your intentions. This is why Machiavelli warned rulers not to rely on being loved. Love is conditional. Love evaporates under pressure. Love turns into resentment the moment you disappoint expectations. Fear, properly calibrated, does not. A feared man can choose to be kind. A loved man has no such choice. Here is the paradox most motivational culture avoids. Power gives you the option to be moral. Without power, morality is imposed on you by others, and imposed morality always benefits the imposer. This is why the wealthy but powerless man feels trapped. He is surrounded by invisible rules he didn't write, expectations he didn't agree to, obligations he never signed. He believes the answer is better intentions. It isn't. The answer is leverage. In the next part, we will break down exactly how power is built. Not through noise, not through aggression, but through structure, positioning, and strategic absence. Because power does not announce itself. It arranges the board quietly, and once the board is arranged, the game is already over. Power is not loud. Power is not emotional. Power does not rush. Power positions. Most men imagine power as force, domination, confrontation, visible authority. That misconception is why they never acquire it. They mistake the outcome for the mechanism. Machiavelli saw the mechanism clearly. Power is built before it is needed, in silence, in structure, in decisions no one applauds. Here is the truth that separates survivors from casualties. By the time power is visible, it is already too late to challenge it. The powerless man reacts. The powerful man arranges. He does not wait for conflict to clarify his boundaries. He embeds those boundaries into systems, contracts, hierarchies, and expectations long before friction appears. This is why absence is one of the most misunderstood tools of power. The man who is always available is never respected. The man who responds instantly is never prioritized. The man who explains himself is already negotiating from weakness. Power creates friction in access. It introduces delay. It creates uncertainty. It forces others to consider consequences before approaching. Not because you are cruel, but because your time, attention, and resources are not communal property. Machiavelli understood that familiarity erodes authority. The more predictable you become, the easier you are to manipulate. The more accessible you are, the more replaceable you feel. Power requires distance. Distance does not mean isolation. It means controlled proximity. You decide when you are reachable. You decide when you engage. You decide when negotiation is allowed. This alone eliminates most threats, because most extraction attempts rely on immediacy, urgency, emotional leverage, manufactured deadlines, guilt disguised as necessity. Distance collapses those tactics. Now understand this. Power is not built by saying no aggressively. It is built by designing your world so that fewer people ever ask. That is the real art. Legal structures that separate you from liability. Social structures that filter access to you. Economic structures that make your wealth difficult to touch. Reputational structures that signal retaliation without needing to perform it. None of this is accidental. The wealthy man without power exposes everything directly. His name is on every asset. His presence is required for every decision. His approval is the bottleneck. The powerful man disperses exposure. He becomes essential but unreachable, necessary but indirect. He cannot be pressured easily because pressure cannot find a clean point of contact. This is why power looks boring from the outside. No drama, no theatrics, no visible dominance, just outcomes. And this is where most men fail, because they want recognition before insulation. They want validation before leverage. They want applause while they are still vulnerable. Power delays gratification. It lets others underestimate you while you solidify position. It allows others to feel comfortable, right up until they realize the terrain has shifted. And when they realize it, there is nothing to argue with. No emotional confrontation, no public conflict, just closed doors. This is the phase where wealth becomes durable, not because it grew, but because it hardened. In the next part, we will confront the most dangerous illusion of all, the belief that visibility equals influence, because the more visible you are, the easier you are to attack. And the men who survive longest are rarely the ones you see. They are the ones you can't reach. Visibility is a tax disguised as success, and most men pay it willingly because they confuse being seen with being secure. Here is the trap. The moment you become visible, you become legible. Your patterns can be studied. Your assets can be mapped. Your weaknesses can be inferred. Visibility turns a man into a diagram, and diagrams invite interference. The world praises transparency because transparency benefits those who are already positioned. It exposes the unshielded. It flatters the unprotected. It punishes the naive. Machiavelli observed this long before social media made it fashionable. The princes who survived were not the ones celebrated in the streets. They were the ones whose influence operated through layers, through intermediaries, through systems that functioned whether or not they were present. The visible man must constantly perform. The powerful man lets structures perform for him. This distinction decides everything. When your name is everywhere, your leverage is nowhere. When your presence is required, your absence becomes a vulnerability. When your story is public, your narrative can be rewritten by anyone with incentive. Visibility creates entitlement. People feel they know you, and familiarity breeds demands. They don't ask permission. They assume access. They interpret silence as weakness. And if you refuse, they escalate, socially, legally, emotionally. This is why so many successful men feel hunted despite doing everything right. They followed the rules. They built publicly. They shared generously. They believed exposure would bring protection. It brought extraction. Power operates inversely. The less you explain, the fewer angles exist. The less you announce, the less can be challenged. The less visible you are, the more myth fills the gaps. And myth is protective. When people don't know how you operate, they hesitate. They calculate. They fear unintended consequences. Ambiguity becomes armor. This is not about hiding in fear. It's about refusing to make yourself convenient. The man who shares everything believes honesty will shield him. But honesty without insulation is simply vulnerability on display. Powerful men understand something uncomfortable. Being misunderstood is often safer than being fully known, because clarity invites optimization by others. Once people know your values, they know how to pressure you. Once they know your limits, they know where to push. Once they know your weaknesses, they know how to exploit. Visibility accelerates this process. This is why Machiavelli warned rulers against relying on reputation alone. Reputation is fragile. It requires constant defense. One accusation can fracture it. One narrative can poison it. Power does not depend on approval. It depends on position. And position is maintained by controlling channels, not applause. Here is the quiet shift most men never make. They build wealth loudly and defend it weakly. They collect attention before they collect insulation. They celebrate milestones before they harden infrastructure. And attention never protects you. It exposes you to people who want what you have without building what you built. This is why true power prefers shadows, not darkness, but depth, layers, distance, controlled disclosure. You don't need to disappear. You need to be unreachable by default. When access is filtered, pressure dissolves. When information is scarce, leverage increases. When your presence is optional, your absence commands respect. This is the turning point. Because once you understand that visibility weakens and obscurity strengthens, you stop chasing validation and start constructing permanence. In the next part, we will confront the final weakness that destroys wealthy men: emotional leakage. Because power collapses the moment emotion becomes predictable, and most men bleed it everywhere. Power does not fail loudly. It leaks, and the most dangerous leak is emotional. Most men lose control long before they lose assets. They reveal themselves in tone, urgency, defensiveness, anger, guilt. Long before money moves, signals move. And predators read signals better than spreadsheets. Here is the brutal reality. Emotion is data. Every reaction teaches the world how to handle you. If you react quickly, you can be rushed. If you react emotionally, you can be provoked. If you react defensively, you can be cornered. If you react generously, you can be drained. Machiavelli understood this instinctively. He watched leaders lose everything, not because they were weak, but because they were transparent. Their faces betrayed them. Their words rushed ahead of their thinking. Their need to be understood exposed their leverage. The powerless man explains. The powerful man delays. Delay is not indecision. Delay is control. When you respond immediately, you surrender the initiative. You allow the other party to set tempo, frame, and pressure. You accept their urgency as legitimate. You let their emotion infect yours. And once that happens, the game is no longer strategic, it's reactive. Emotion turns negotiation into confession. Anger reveals boundaries. Guilt reveals pressure points. Eagerness reveals dependence. Fear reveals weakness. This is why powerful men appear calm even when stakes are high. Not because they feel nothing, but because they refuse to distribute information for free. Silence unnerves people who came prepared to extract. Calm frustrates those who planned to provoke. Ambiguity dissolves scripts built on predictable reactions. This is not emotional suppression. It is emotional discipline. A man who cannot regulate his responses cannot defend his wealth. Because every system, legal, social, economic, relies on pressure. Pressure is applied to see where you bend. Most men bend instantly. They rush to clarify. They rush to justify. They rush to reassure. Each rush teaches others how to move you. Power teaches the opposite behavior. When confronted, you pause. When accused, you slow down. When pressured, you reduce output. You do not argue narratives. You let time erode them. You do not chase resolution. You let uncertainty weigh on the other side. This alone filters opportunists from threats, because opportunists rely on speed. They want quick concessions, fast agreements, emotional buy-in. They disappear when progress stalls. Real threats remain, but now they must reveal themselves. This is another principle Machiavelli warned about. Never reveal your intentions while the other side is still guessing. Curiosity is leverage. Confusion creates caution. The moment you reveal how much something matters to you, you surrender power over it. This is why emotional exposure is catastrophic for wealthy men. The more they have, the more people probe their reactions. They test sensitivity. They push small buttons to see which ones light up. A reaction today becomes a strategy tomorrow, used against you. This is why the most dangerous words a man can say under pressure are, "I just want this to be over. I don't want conflict. I don't want problems." Those words are invitations. Power never announces fatigue. It absorbs pressure without acknowledging it. It lets the other side grow impatient. It allows time to rebalance the field. Emotion is expensive. Silence is cheap. The wealthy man who masters emotional control becomes difficult to read, difficult to rush, difficult to manipulate. And difficulty is deterrence. In the next part, we will expose the final transformation, the moment wealth stops being a target and starts becoming untouchable. Because when power, structure, obscurity, and emotional discipline align, something changes. The hunt ends. There is a moment, rare, quiet, almost invisible, when the hunt stops. Not because you disappeared, not because you surrendered, but because you became inefficient to attack. This is the moment wealth transforms into position. Up until now, your money was a signal, a scent, an invitation, something that triggered movement around you. People calculated angles, systems adjusted, pressure points were tested, but when power fully forms, something changes in the environment. The calculations stop because extraction no longer makes sense. This is the stage Machiavelli reserved for rulers who survived long enough to understand the game. Not conquerors, not heroes, survivors. Men whose wealth was no longer soft. Here is the distinction most people never grasp. True power does not repel attacks through force. It makes attacks irrational. The cost becomes unclear. The outcome becomes uncertain. The risk outweighs the reward. And predators do not gamble blindly. At this stage, your wealth is no longer centralized. It is layered, buffered, distanced from your name, your presence, your emotions. Pressure can no longer reach a clean target. Legal pressure hits walls. Social pressure finds no entry. Emotional pressure finds no reaction. You are no longer the point of contact, and that is when peace begins. Not the fragile peace of appeasement, but the durable peace of deterrence. Most men misunderstand deterrence. They think it requires visible punishment. It doesn't. It requires credible consequence, and credible consequence does not need to be exercised often, only believed. Machiavelli observed that the most stable rulers were not the cruelest. They were the clearest. Everyone understood where the lines were. Everyone understood the cost of crossing them. And because of that clarity, crossings became rare. Power simplifies your life. Fewer requests reach you. Fewer challenges escalate. Fewer conflicts form. Not because people love you, but because they respect the terrain. This is why powerful men appear calm while others panic. They are not calm because nothing could go wrong. They are calm because even if something goes wrong, it will not reach them directly. They are insulated. This is the phase where wealth stops demanding attention. It stops leaking energy. It stops pulling you into endless negotiations, explanations, and defenses. You are no longer proving anything. You are no longer performing success. You are simply positioned. And this is where the final illusion dies. The belief that power is about domination over others. It isn't. Power is domination over circumstance. It is the ability to choose when to engage and when to disappear. It is the freedom to remain silent without being ignored, to refuse without retaliation, to move without permission. This is why so few people ever reach this stage. They want comfort too early. They want recognition too loudly. They want safety without building teeth. Machiavelli never promised happiness. He promised survival, continuity, legacy. Because wealth that cannot survive you is not wealth. It is consumption. And in the final part, we will confront the hardest truth of all, the one that separates men who hold power from men who briefly touch it. The truth about legacy, and why most fortunes die with the man who made them. Wealth dies easily. That is the final truth most men refuse to face. They imagine money as something solid, permanent, transferable by default. They believe that once built, it will naturally flow forward into children, into legacy, into history. It doesn't. History is littered with fortunes that vanished within a single generation, not stolen, not destroyed, simply unprotected once the original builder was gone. Because wealth without power is personal. Power without structure dies with the man. Machiavelli understood legacy in a way modern culture avoids. He knew that what survives is not money, but systems, not success stories, but arrangements, not intentions, but institutions. The man who builds wealth but fails to embed power builds a monument to himself, and monuments crumble. Here is the brutal pattern. The builder is disciplined, the inheritor is comfortable. The third generation is entitled, and then it ends. Why? Because the builder carried the power internally, his instincts, his boundaries, his discipline, his emotional control, but he never externalized it. He never turned it into rules that operate without him. So when he disappears, the force disappears with him. Power must outlive personality. This is the final evolution. At the highest level, power is no longer something you exercise. It is something that operates automatically in your absence, through trusts, through governance, through incentives, through consequences that trigger without emotion. This is where wealth becomes generational instead of temporary. The men who achieve this are rarely celebrated. Their names fade. Their structures remain. Their influence continues quietly, long after their voice is gone. This is why Machiavelli believed rulers should think beyond their own lifetime, because a man who only secures himself has not truly secured anything. The ultimate failure is not losing money. It is forcing your successors to fight the battles you refuse to prepare them for. Power at this level is restraint turned into architecture. It is discipline frozen into structure. It is foresight made permanent. And here is the final reversal, the one that shocks most people. Once power is fully built, you no longer need to think about it. You are free. Not free because nothing can touch you, but free because everything that could touch you must go through layers you designed. This is what Machiavelli meant by stability, not peace, not happiness, but continuity. So if you remember nothing else from this entire video, remember this: money is a resource, power is a system, legacy is automation. If you chase wealth without power, you will spend your life defending leaks. If you build power first, wealth becomes quiet, durable, and boring. And boring is the highest form of success, because boring doesn't collapse. It doesn't attract predators. It doesn't demand attention. It simply remains. That is the end of the game.